Late last night, what began as a quiet moment turned into a storm that would shake the entire love and hip-hop circle. Ciara's unexpected late-night call came with an intensity that no one could have predicted. Her voice trembling, her words heavy with urgency. Yandy, exhausted from a long day, reportedly froze when Ciara's name appeared on her screen, unaware that this single call would change everything. As Ciara began to speak, the tone in her voice made it clear. This wasn't gossip or speculation. This was revelation. She hinted at secrets buried deep, truths that had been hidden under layers of loyalty, forgiveness, and love. Those who know Yandy well say she instantly felt a chill, her mind flashing through moments that suddenly didn't add up. Each word Ciara spoke hit harder than the last, her voice cracking as she revealed what she had seen and heard. Yandy, stunned and silent, asked her to repeat it, praying she had misheard. But the truth came again, sharp and undeniable, leaving her in a state of disbelief. When the call ended, she sat motionless, the weight of Ciara's words echoing in her chest. Across the room, her phone screen dimmed, but her mind didn't, replaying years of trust, every promise Mendeecees had made, every moment that now felt tainted by doubt. Insiders say that within minutes, the air around her changed. Her expression turned blank, her heartbeat loud enough to drown the silence. Before the news even reached the public, group chats among their friends began to buzz, each message carrying more tension than the last. "You could feel it in the air," one source said. Something had cracked open and nobody could stop it. As dawn began to rise, the city still slept, unaware of the emotional explosion that had already begun. Yandy hadn't confronted Mendeecees yet, but the silence between them said enough. A silence heavier than any argument, filled with questions that had no easy answers. For now, all that remained was the echo of Ciara's trembling voice, the whisper that would soon turn into chaos. A single call had pulled at a loose thread, and before long, everything they'd built was about to unravel before the world's eyes. By the time morning light crept through the blinds, the weight of Ciara's late-night revelation was already spreading like wildfire. What had started as a private phone call between two women now rippled across the entire love and hip-hop circle, leaving everyone uneasy and unsure of what to believe. Insiders say Ciara's words weren't vague hints. They were specific, personal, and detailed enough to make people pause. She didn't just suggest there was a secret. She laid it out piece by piece, as if she had been holding onto it for too long. Those close to the situation claim that what she exposed could change how people see Mendeecees and his relationship with Yandy forever. And while no one dared to speak publicly yet, the tension behind closed doors was undeniable. Yandy, still processing everything, kept replaying Ciara's voice in her mind. The cracks, the hesitation, and the certainty. Every word felt like a thread being pulled from the fabric of her marriage, unraveling years of loyalty and trust. Meanwhile, whispers began spreading among their friends, each one twisting the story a little more. What was said on that call? Was it true? How long had Ciara known? The questions piled up faster than anyone could answer them. Social media was still quiet, but the private conversations were anything but. Group chats buzzed with concern, disbelief, and curiosity. Some defended Mendeecees immediately, insisting Ciara must have misunderstood something. Others said Ciara wouldn't risk everything she had built just to stir drama. Not this time. As the hours passed, that uncertainty turned into speculation, and speculation into quiet panic. Yandy avoided her phone, refusing to look at the flood of unread messages. The people around her knew better than to ask questions, but their silence spoke volumes. It was as if everyone was waiting for the next move, a confrontation, a confirmation, or a denial. Inside Yandy's home, the atmosphere was thick, every sound amplified by the tension that hung in the air. She knew nothing would ever feel normal again until she faced Mendeecees and heard his side. But deep down, a small part of her feared that Ciara's words weren't lies or exaggerations. They were the truth, finally breaking free after being buried for far too long. By evening, Yandy could no longer hold it in. The silence that had filled her home all day was too heavy, too loud to ignore. Every time she looked at Mendeecees, The words Sierra had spoken replayed in her mind like a broken record. She tried to stay composed, tried to convince herself that maybe there was an explanation. But the unease in her chest kept growing. Finally, she took a deep breath, turned to him, and asked the question that had been burning inside her since that late-night call. The moment she said Sierra's name, Mendeecees' expression shifted. His eyes narrowed for a split second, just enough for Yandy to notice. That one reaction told her everything she needed to know. He wasn't shocked by the mention of the call. He already knew what it was about. What followed wasn't yelling or chaos. It was something colder, a quiet confrontation where every word carried weight. "Just tell me the truth," Yandy said, her voice steady but trembling underneath. Mendeecees hesitated, his silence louder than any denial could be. He started to explain, but every word only deepened her confusion. "It's not what it sounds like," he said, avoiding her eyes. But Yandy had heard that line too many times before, in arguments, in apologies, in moments when she had chosen to believe him. This time it felt different. This time, the truth wasn't hiding behind misunderstanding. It was standing right in front of her. She asked again, this time more directly, demanding names, details, answers. Mendeecees' tone softened, but his explanations felt rehearsed, almost defensive. Every pause made the room colder, every sigh heavier. The space between them, once filled with warmth and laughter, now felt like a battlefield of silence and disbelief. Finally, Yandy's voice broke. "Do you know what that call did to me?" she whispered, tears threatening to fall. "Do you understand what it means to hear someone say those things about us?" Mendeecees reached out to her, but she stepped back, her heart torn between love and betrayal. The argument never turned explosive. It didn't need to. The real damage had already been done by the things left unsaid. As the night grew darker, both of them sat in opposite corners of the room, surrounded by questions that neither had the courage to answer. The next morning, the tension that began inside Yandy's home started to seep into the world outside. What was once a private conflict between two people slowly began to ripple through their entire circle, touching friends, colleagues, and even distant acquaintances who could sense that something wasn't right. The energy had shifted. Conversations that used to be lighthearted now carried an unspoken heaviness. Every glance, every pause in conversation hinted at what people were too afraid to say out loud. Those who had seen Yandy and Mendeecees together before the call couldn't ignore the difference now. The smiles seemed forced, the chemistry strained, the comfort gone. Insiders described the change as instant, saying it was like watching a relationship quietly unravel in real time. Even those not directly involved felt the tension. Sierra, meanwhile, tried to distance herself from the chaos she had unintentionally unleashed, but it was too late. Her call had already set things in motion that couldn't be undone. Friends began choosing sides without even realizing it, some defending Yandy's right to be angry, others insisting that she should have waited to hear the full truth before reacting. Group chats turned into debates, and mutual friends started avoiding gatherings altogether to stay out of the drama. At the studio, producers and cast members whispered behind the scenes, wondering if the situation would spill onto camera. Everyone knew that in their world, private pain never stayed private for long. Yandy tried to focus on her work, pretending everything was fine, but her silence said more than words ever could. Mendeecees, on the other hand, acted calm, trying to convince everyone that things were under control. But those close to him could see the guilt in his demeanor, the hesitation in his speech. The balance between them had cracked, and no amount of pretending could fix it overnight. What made things worse was how easily rumors began to morph into new stories. Each retelling made the situation sound bigger, darker, more scandalous. People who weren't even there started claiming they knew what really happened. It was the kind of chaos that grew louder even when no one was speaking. And as the day faded into night, one thing became clear. The ripple Sierra started had turned into waves, and soon, those waves would hit the public eye. By the next day, the story that had started as quiet whispers behind closed doors finally broke into the public eye. And once it did, there was no controlling it. Social media became a wildfire of opinions, theories, and accusations. Fans who had followed Yandy and Mendeecees' journey for years suddenly turned into detectives, dissecting every post, every caption, every glance in old videos. Screenshots from past episodes began circulating online, with users claiming they had seen the signs all along. Hashtags like GB or Yandy and Mendeecees, Janchis are Sierra Call, and Don't You Love and Hip Hop Scandal started trending within hours. Influencer pages picked up the story, adding their own spin, while gossip blogs ran with headlines that only fueled the chaos further. Yandy, still processing her emotions, watched as her private pain became public entertainment. Every picture she had ever shared was now under scrutiny, comments flooding with sympathy, curiosity, and judgment all at once. She deserves better, some wrote, while others speculated if the entire situation was just another publicity stunt. The more she tried to stay silent, the louder the world became. Meanwhile, Mendeecees faced his own wave of backlash. His old interviews were resurfaced, his words analyzed for hidden meanings. Even his silence was interpreted as guilt by some, while others defended him, insisting that people were too quick to assume the worst. Sierra, at the center of it all, found herself both blamed and praised. Some called her brave for speaking up. Others accused her of destroying a family. Every new post she made was flooded with comments demanding more details. The internet had taken over the narrative, twisting and reshaping it with every share and retweet. What hurt Yandy the most wasn't just the betrayal. It was how strangers now debated her heartbreak like it was a storyline. The lines between real life and reality TV blurred completely. Even people within their circle started using the situation for clout, leaking exclusive information to stay relevant. By sunset, it felt like the entire internet was watching their every move. For Yandy and Mendeecees, there was no more hiding. Every reaction, every silence, every post would be analyzed and discussed. What had once been a whisper between friends had now become a viral storm, and there was no going back. When the noise of the internet finally faded into the background, all that remained between Yandy and Mendeecees was silence, the kind that cuts deeper than any words ever could. Behind closed doors, the tension had turned into heartbreak, and both of them could feel it lingering in every corner of their home. Mendeecees tried to speak, to explain, to reach out. But every time he opened his mouth, Yandy's expression stopped him. She didn't need more words. She needed the truth. And deep down, he knew she wasn't ready to hear it. Or maybe he wasn't ready to say it. Friends close to the couple described Mendeecees as haunted, pacing, replaying the argument over and over, trying to figure out where everything went wrong. Yandy, meanwhile, withdrew into herself, scrolling through social media and seeing strangers debate her pain like it was entertainment. The woman who once radiated strength and confidence now looked drained, her eyes carrying a quiet sadness that no camera could capture. At night, when the house grew quiet, the distance between them felt unbearable. Mendeecees sat on one side of the bed, guilt heavy on his chest, while Yandy stared into the dark, fighting back tears. She wanted to believe him, to hold on to the love they had built, but Sierra's words echoed louder than his apologies. Every gesture he made, a gentle touch, a whispered sorry, a promise to make things right, only reminded her of what had been broken. The trust they once shared, once unshakable, now felt fragile, almost gone. She could still see the man she loved, but he looked different now, shadowed by regret and mistakes she hadn't asked for. "I never meant to hurt you," he finally said one night, his voice barely above a whisper. Yandy didn't respond. She just looked at him, really looked, and saw the man who had fought for her, loved her, and still somehow disappointed her. Tears welled in her eyes, not out of anger, but from the pain of realizing that love alone wasn't enough to fix what had been broken. The silence between them grew again, heavy and unspoken, filled with memories that used to bring comfort, but now only reminded them of what they were losing. Not just each other, but the peace that once made their love feel unshakable. What was supposed to be a calm evening with family quickly turned into another emotional battleground. Yandy and Mendeecees had agreed to attend a small gathering, hoping perhaps that being around loved ones might ease the tension between them, but instead, it only made things worse. The energy in the room shifted the moment they walked in. Conversations fell quiet, glances were exchanged, and even laughter sounded forced. Everyone knew something was off, but no one dared to say it out loud. Sierra's name wasn't mentioned, yet her presence lingered like an invisible shadow over the table. Yandy tried to smile, to play her part as if everything was normal, but the cracks showed through. Her eyes were tired, her tone distant, and every time Mendeecees spoke, she seemed to drift somewhere far away. Family members noticed the distance, the subtle tension in how they sat, how they avoided eye contact, how their laughter never synced the way it used to. One relative tried to lighten the mood with a joke, but it only made the silence afterward more awkward. Eventually, someone gently asked if everything was okay. That single question was enough to break the fragile calm. Yandy's expression stiffened, and Mendeecees took a deep breath, ready to answer, but she cut him off. "Don't," she said quietly, her voice carrying both exhaustion and hurt. The room went still. No one moved, no one spoke. Mendeecees looked around the table, embarrassed and frustrated, trying to maintain his composure. But it was too late. The truth had already filled the room without a word being said. Some family members exchanged nervous looks, while others stared at their plates, wishing they hadn't come. Even the children could sense something wasn't right. The night dragged on, each minute heavier than the last, until Yandy finally excused herself, saying she wasn't feeling well. As she walked out, the weight of every stare followed her. Mendeecees stayed behind for a moment, trying to save face, but his silence said everything. By the time he stepped outside, Yandy was already in the car, staring out the window. The drive home was quiet, filled only with the sound of her breathing and the faint hum of the city. Whatever they had tried to hide from others was now out in the open, not in words, but in the silence that spoke louder than anything else. That night, everything finally came to a head. The tension that had been simmering for days reached its breaking point, leaving no more room for silence, no more space for pretending. Yandy sat on the edge of the bed, her hands clasped tightly, her eyes distant but full of unspoken emotion. Mendeecees stood near the window, his back turned as if afraid to face what was coming. The air between them was thick, not with anger this time, but with exhaustion. Both of them had been carrying too much for too long. "I can't do this anymore," Yandy whispered, her voice trembling yet steady enough to make him turn around. For a moment, their eyes met, and in that single look, everything they'd been avoiding came rushing out. The pain, the guilt, the confusion. Mendeecees walked closer, trying to reach for her hand, but she pulled away. "You say sorry, but do you even understand what that word means anymore?" she asked, her voice cracking under the weight of her emotions. He exhaled heavily, frustration mixing with regret. "I've made mistakes, Yandy, but I've never stopped loving you," he said softly. She shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Love isn't supposed to hurt like this. It's not supposed to make me question who I am, or what we are." For a moment, the room was silent except for the sound of her quiet sobs. Mendeecees sat down across from her, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't want to lose us," he said. But Yandy didn't answer. She had heard those words before, too many times. The difference now was that she didn't know if she still believed them. Every apology sounded like a recycled promise. Every reassurance felt hollow. "You already did," she finally replied, not out of anger but out of acceptance. The words hit him harder than any argument ever could. He lowered his head, realizing that this time there might not be a way back. The night grew heavier as both sat in silence, their love caught between forgiveness and finality. It wasn't a dramatic explosion, just a quiet ending, the kind where hearts break not from shouting, but from the realization that love alone can't fix what's already shattered beyond repair. It's already shattered beyond repair. As the days passed, Yandy and Mendeecees found themselves living two different realities, one public, one painfully private. Online, their names refused to leave the headlines. Every blog, every gossip page, every YouTube commentator had an opinion. Clips of their old interviews resurfaced daily, spliced together with dramatic music and captions like, "The love that fell apart," or "Did we miss the signs?" Fans who once admired them now argued fiercely in comment sections, taking sides like it was a televised competition. But behind the screen, away from the chaos of likes and retweets, their real lives were falling apart quietly. Yandy stopped posting altogether, her usual updates replaced by silence that spoke volumes. The world assumed her silence was strategy, but in truth, she simply had nothing left to say. The weight of the constant scrutiny was suffocating. Even when she stepped outside, she felt eyes on her, strangers whispering, phones subtly raised, hoping to capture a moment of weakness. Mendeecees tried to stay strong, insisting that time would calm things down, but the damage had already spread too far. Every time he scrolled through his feed, he saw people dissecting their lives like a storyline instead of a marriage. He felt the guilt sink deeper, not only for what had happened, but for how it had been exposed to millions. Inside their home, the silence had turned cold, each of them trapped in their own thoughts. At night, Yandy would sit alone in the living room, scrolling through comments she wished she'd never read, each one reopening wounds she was trying to close. "She should have known," one said. "He doesn't deserve her," said another. No one saw the sleepless nights, the quiet breakdowns, or the moments when they both sat in the same room, unable to look at each other. Even the people closest to them began keeping their distance, afraid to be dragged into the storm. Public pressure had turned their private pain into a spectacle, and every rumor, every post made healing harder. For Yandy and Mendeecees, love had become a performance they no longer wanted to be part of. The world saw the headlines, but only they knew the truth, that fame can amplify love, but it can also destroy it, leaving behind two people struggling to find themselves in the noise. When the chaos finally began to quiet down, what remained between Yandy and Mendeecees was something unfamiliar, a fragile calm, filled with uncertainty. The headlines started to fade, the gossip pages moved on to new stories, and yet, the emotional wreckage still surrounded them. Their home, once full of laughter and late-night talks, now echoed with the sound of distance. It wasn't anger anymore, it was emptiness. Both of them had grown too tired to fight, too drained to keep defending their sides. Yandy spent her mornings sitting by the window, staring into the city, wondering how everything had changed so quickly. There were moments when she missed him deeply, moments when she wished none of it had happened, but then Sierra's words would return, reminding her that trust, once broken, never truly heals the same way. Mendeecees tried to make amends, calling, checking in, trying to rebuild small pieces of connection, but every gesture felt like patching a wound that hadn't stopped bleeding. He wasn't the same either. The guilt had softened his confidence, replaced by regret and reflection. Those close to him said he finally understood what it meant to lose not just a partner, but a best friend. Despite the damage, neither of them made a public statement. They chose silence, a rare act of peace in a world that thrives on noise. Fans speculated endlessly, but Yandy didn't care anymore. She had learned that some battles aren't meant to be fought in front of an audience. Late one night, as rain tapped against the windows, Mendeecees sent her a simple message. "I'm sorry for everything. Not for the world, for you." She read it but didn't reply. Maybe she wasn't ready. Maybe she didn't know if forgiveness would ever come. But for the first time in weeks, she didn't feel anger. Just acceptance. The kind that comes when you've survived a storm and finally start to breathe again. Whether they find their way back to each other or go their separate ways, no one knows. But one thing is certain. The experience changed them forever. The world may move on, but for Yandy and Mendeecees, the echoes of that late-night call will never truly fade. It was more than gossip. It was the moment their love story was rewritten, leaving behind two hearts forever marked by truth, pain, and the possibility of starting over.